Barbra Streisand's career is a testament to meticulous control. For over 50 years, she carefully sculpted her public image, revealing only what she wanted the world to see. Every performance, every interview, every public appearance was calculated. Yet beneath that polished exterior was a woman deeply aware of the fragility of personal intimacy. In Hollywood, fame can be as isolating as it is illuminating. Barbara's control wasn't vanity, it was survival. By mastering what others could know about her, she created a fortress of emotional safety. This precision extended to her relationships, where the stakes were far higher than public perception. The lesson she learned early in life was clear. Love, if mishandled, could cost freedom, independence, and stability. Her approach to life was strategic, balancing ambition, artistry, and self-protection. And when she eventually found love in her 50s, it wasn't because she had softened, but because she had learned how to navigate connection without sacrificing autonomy. Barbara's first marriage to actor Elliot Goode started with promise. They were young, ambitious, and poised to become a cultural power couple. On the surface, their union reflected glamour and artistic synergy. Behind closed doors, however, the dynamics were complex. As Barbara's career soared, Elliot struggled with living in her orbit. The press often referred to him as Mr. Streryand, a label that subtly eroded his identity and created private tension. Their love, passionate yet imbalanced, demonstrated the high cost of fame. Over time, Barbra realized that even deep affection could destabilize life if not carefully managed. She experienced firsthand that love can be consuming, leaving emotional scars that take years to heal. The marriage ended, but the lessons remained. She recognized that intimacy without boundaries could threaten everything she had built. That awareness would inform decades of relationships that followed, influencing not just whom she loved, but how she loved. Following her divorce, Barbra entered a series of relationships that each reinforced her caution. John Peters, Richard Baskin, and Don Johnson offered different forms of affection, but none delivered lasting stability. Some were volatile, others fleeting, yet each shared a common theme: unpredictability. Barbara's experiences taught her to guard herself against the highs and lows of emotional attachment. She became adept at recognizing the patterns that could threaten her autonomy. Passion, she discovered, often came at a price. Intensity could be intoxicating, but it was rarely sustainable. Over time, she learned to compartmentalize desire, professional life, and personal connection. Love could be intense, yet remain controlled. This approach wasn't about denying herself joy, but rather about creating a framework where her identity and emotional safety were preserved. Independence became her default, solitude a comfort, not a punishment. By the time Barbra reached her early 50s, she had resigned herself to a solitary life. Independence wasn't a temporary phase, it had become her protective armor. The unpredictability of past relationships had made her wary of conventional romantic attachment. She embraced privacy as a form of empowerment, using solitude to focus on creative projects, professional growth, and personal reflection. Love was no longer a pursuit, it was a possibility to be cautiously approached. This mindset explains why her encounter with James Brolan would feel so remarkable. Barbra wasn't searching for romance, validation, or rescue. She was closed, emotionally self-sufficient, and fiercely protective of her space. When James entered her life, it wasn't to ignite a conventional love story. It was to offer something subtly different: connection without chaos, presence without pressure, and an intimacy shaped by choice rather than necessity. In 1996, Barbra attended a dinner party she almost skipped. Arranged awkwardly by the ex-wife of a former partner, the setup seemed inconvenient. At 54, Barbra was careful with her time and emotional energy. When she realized James Brolan would be there, her instinct was to avoid the encounter entirely. She hid downstairs, diverting attention with children's games, an act of both shyness and protection. James, freshly divorced and intentionally celibate, approached without pretense. There was no attempt to charm, no expectation of drama. When Barbra eventually joined the group, the initial moment was anticlimactic. He did not match her imagined ideal. Instead, he was ordinary in appearance, clean-shaven, unassuming. Yet her candid comment about his hair became pivotal. For someone like James, it wasn't rudeness, it was authenticity. Barbara's honesty, unfiltered and unexpected, created a rare, unguarded human connection. It was not instant love, but the start of an emotional shift neither anticipated. Unlike previous partners, James did not react to Barbara's fame with intimidation or competition. He did not seek to perform or impress. He listened. This simple, rare attention had a profound effect on Barbara. She was accustomed to the glare of public attention and the performative dynamics it encouraged. With James, she could be herself without managing perception. Their early conversations were long, deliberate, and immersive. On their first official outing, they stayed talking until the early hours of the morning. No physical gestures defined the moment. Intellectual and emotional engagement took precedence. The absence of rush or pressure allowed Barbara to experience a form of intimacy she hadn't felt in decades. Connection for her was now a practice of presence, a space where her autonomy was respected. It was not dramatic or cinematic, but it was deeply meaningful. Soon after, James departed for Ireland to direct a film. Despite the distance, their bond intensified. Long hours of phone calls created an unusual attachment. Barbara later described falling asleep on the bathroom floor with the phone pressed to her ear, a quiet testimony to emotional involvement without losing control. Simultaneously, Barbara was engrossed in her own work, directing and editing a film. She later reflected that meeting James earlier in life might have been impossible. Her younger self would not have been open to this kind of slow, unhurried attachment. In a paradoxical way, her retreat into privacy created the conditions for a relationship grounded in respect, listening, and patience. By the time James returned, the connection was both familiar and carefully nurtured, illustrating how restraint and self-possession can form the foundation of enduring love. When Barbara and James decided to marry, it was a deliberate act of control rather than a response to societal expectation. Independence had become her emotional default, and commitment still felt inherently risky. Their wedding, set for July 1st, 2 years after their first date, was a carefully orchestrated private event at Barbara's Malibu home. Every detail reflected Barbara's insistence on discretion, discreet invitations, controlled access, and a serene, contained environment. Guests were carefully selected, not for spectacle but for trustworthiness. The ceremony's design emphasized elegance, simplicity, and emotional containment. Music drowned out potential outside intrusions, ensuring privacy. Flowers, lighting, and decor were meticulously arranged. Every element was curated not to impress the world, but to safeguard the sanctity of the experience. Barbara's approach illustrates her belief that intimacy requires both freedom and careful boundaries. Following their marriage, the couple gradually withdrew from public life. Hollywood premieres, interviews, and social engagements became rare. Privacy was paramount, not just a preference but a deliberate practice. Their social world contracted, while their internal universe expanded. Inside their Malibu estate, Barbara built a private indoor mall, showcasing antiques, collectibles, and vintage fashion. This wasn't eccentric indulgence. It was a controlled environment for exploration, leisure, and intimacy. Guests were invited selectively. Even seemingly whimsical features reflected a deeper philosophy. Barbara valued experiences and emotional engagement without intrusion. This retreat underscores the couple's unique dynamic. Their shared life prioritized internal stability over external validation. Barbara and James intentionally avoided having children together, focusing instead on companionship, ritual, and personal routines. Daily life became the framework for intimacy, with shared tasks, conversations, and quiet presence forming the core of connection. Grief, too, was contained. When a longtime dog passed away, Barbara cloned it twice, not to replace it, but to preserve a sense of continuity and emotional stability. Endings were resisted, loss was managed. Their marriage emphasized predictability, measured interaction, and the careful maintenance of peace. Conflict was not explosive, but managed through structured approaches, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of human dynamics. Emotional safety was prioritized above all else. Inside the home, their rituals became highly codified. Work, rest, conversation, and even creativity were often side by side, typically in bed. James described their mattress as the most important investment they had ever made because so much of their life unfolded there. Routine replaced spectacle. Their shared presence, often silent and unremarkable from an outsider's view, became the fabric of their bond. They did not need passion as a public display. Intimacy was embedded in daily rhythm. For Barbara, who had spent decades managing both fame and emotional exposure, this inward-focused life was both protective and fulfilling. The balance of their relationship defied conventional definitions of partnership. James willingly accommodated Barbara's need for control, understanding her history and the dynamics of her life. He did not compete for dominance. He softened, yielding to her gravitational pull. While this ensured harmony, it also highlighted a power imbalance. Their marriage functioned not through confrontation or negotiation, but through careful coexistence. The relationship's strength came from its predictability, not drama, demonstrating a unique interpretation of partnership, one where emotional security takes precedence over equality or public perception. Even after decades together, public perception remained a concern. When rumors surfaced in 2018 about a potential breakup, the couple responded with humor and dismissal, emphasizing their commitment to privacy. They managed narrative control meticulously, aware that intrusion could destabilize their carefully maintained environment. Financial independence reinforced this dynamic. Shared money had caused issues in prior marriages, so accounts remained separate. The practical measures may seem transactional, yet they reveal the underlying philosophy. Compartmentalization is essential to sustaining intimacy and autonomy. Therapy played a strategic role in the marriage. Rather than a tool for repairing damage, it was preventive, a neutral space to address disagreements before escalation. Barbara and James both valued this structure, recognizing that emotional stability requires constant maintenance. Arguments were not avoided outright, but carefully managed. Step-backs, walks, and cooling-off periods became ritualized methods of preserving equilibrium. In this context, conflict avoidance wasn't weakness. It was deliberate preservation of a delicate balance, a testament to how decades of life experience shape approaches to intimacy. One striking aspect of their bond is what is absent: dramatic gestures, passionate declarations, and public fanfare. Love is expressed subtly, in routines, shared space, and measured vulnerability. Barbara's history of intense, destabilizing relationships informed this preference. Having experienced love that burned bright and then destroyed stability, she chose something quieter, love that endures by design rather than performance. Intimacy became a private, controlled act, carefully maintained over time, proving that love can thrive without spectacle. Daily rituals, such as shared meals, parallel work habits, and quiet conversations, replaced conventional markers of romance. James described the quiet moments as more significant than any grand gesture. Even moments that inspired art, like famous romantic songs, were rooted in private exchanges rather than public performance. Their bond prioritizes routine and stability over emotional highs, reflecting Barbara's philosophy. Love is less about excitement and more about enduring presence. The marriage's enduring strength lies in its intentionality. Stability, predictability, and containment were chosen over passion, intensity, or public admiration. Barbara and James built a life that is both protective and sustaining. Their home, routines, and emotional boundaries form a self-contained ecosystem, emphasizing longevity and mutual respect. This approach challenges conventional Hollywood narratives, where love is often equated with drama, visibility, and intensity. Their version of commitment prioritizes psychological safety above all else. Observers often describe their relationship as strange. The strangeness stems from inward-focused intimacy, controlled environments, and meticulously managed rituals. From the outside, the marriage may seem claustrophobic or unusual, yet it works precisely because it adheres to rules neither partner has violated. Love, in their universe, is less about passion or conquest and more about predictability, ritual, and careful attention to personal boundaries. The strangeness is deliberate, a byproduct of decades of experience, and a hallmark of the relationship's resilience. Barbara's lifelong management of image and intimacy culminated in a marriage defined by containment. Conflicts are prevented before they erupt, grief is moderated, and daily life unfolds within controlled spaces. Privacy is not merely preference but survival strategy. Love exists here not as an explosive force, but as a stable, managed presence. Barbara and James' relationship demonstrates that intimacy does not always require public display, dramatic gestures, or continuous negotiation. Instead, it can flourish quietly, internally, and deliberately. Barbara Streisand's story offers insight into mature love. She did not seek to relive youthful intensity, but to create a space where connection could endure without sacrificing autonomy. Their marriage is not glamorous, but it is durable. It prioritizes stability, trust, and structured intimacy over performance or spectacle. For some, this may seem suffocating. For others, it is aspirational. Barbara and James illustrate a rare form of love, one shaped by experience, designed by choice, and maintained through careful attention. Ultimately, it challenges assumptions about romance, intimacy, and the kinds of love that can endure.